Who watches The Watchmen? We watch The Watchmen.
Hi guys, this is Second Perspective. My name's Paul Weston.
I'm Mitchell Allen.
And I'm Kevin Hatch.
You guys guessed it. We're watching The Watchmen.
Yes. Wow. Nice little theme song, Kevin. So this film is set in an alternate 1985 where a lot of chaos is run rampant and it's sort of dystopian future, and vigilante superheroes exist. And one of them gets murdered very quickly on in the film, so that's not really a spoiler. And it's a murder mystery, and also a global conspiracy, and it gets very heady.
Yeah, one thing I will say to you guys, it's a 2-hour, 40-minute film, so you have to definitely be invested. Or if I'm being very specific, 2 hours, 42 minutes. But this is directed by Zack Snyder, and as with most things Zack Snyder, it's all very visually compelling. And I think it does actually a very good job of taking sort of comic book elements or things that you would definitely believe would be in that sort of medium, and transitions it really well into a sort of a live action kind of film.
Well, it was. I mean, it's visually very vibrant. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that I like about Snyder's stuff is that there's a lot of very drab colors in movies these days. Do you know what I mean? Where you walk in, you're sort of it's going to be gray for 2 hours, and then that's it. And he does commit to making color palettes and making a visual experience for the audience, which I really appreciate. It's a big highlight of a lot of his films, but I think this one in particular, because it's based on graphic novel, I think it works really well for that. Kevin?
Definitely, and it really helps that in working off the graphic novel too, he's very, very attentive to the imagery of Dave Gibbons' art style. There's a lot of really deliberate, iconic imagery that he uses throughout. There's the smiley face motif, and there's other sort of allusions to famous artworks and so forth. And cinematographically, is that a word, cinematographically?
It is now.
Sure, yeah, let's go with that. Sure.
So he's really, and as well as trying to pay homage to the more key visual moments of the graphic novel, he also works in a lot of clever little leitmotifs. There's allusion to Apocalypse Now, and The Last Supper, and so forth. So it's kind of fun if you're being really eagle-eyed throughout.
Yeah, the big thing, I think that sort of stuff exists because it's very clear Zack Snyder is super passionate about this film. Even if you don't particularly care for it, you can definitely tell this was made with love. Another big strength for me that I really enjoyed about this film is that I thought it tackled some really grand themes and large questions that I didn't think it could handle, and it left me to think about certain things, and it didn't leave it in a very sort of black and white kind of nature. And that I'm sure in our discussion we'll be arguing very much so about the grays of everything, and so. I could see it being really easy in a lot of superhero films to just make it very sort of cookie cutter and being the good guy's the good guy, the bad guy's the bad guy, and this is right, this is wrong. You just have to fight the evil spirits within. It doesn't do that, right?
Yeah. One of the dual strengths I think of this movie is strengths and weaknesses, perhaps, is that it leaves the moral ambiguity of the source material intact. You don't really come out of here with a clear winner, a clear villain, a clear hero. They do tend to offer a more shaded view of society. Having said that, it sort of doesn't make its mind up, I think, for me, in the end, whether it's trying to be a nihilist movie or it's just having fun or whatever it is. And I think that's the problem, is that it takes very heavy source material with a lot of different interpretations. It sort of boils it down to none. Is that too far, maybe, or I don't know.
No, and what I noticed too is coming from the graphic novel and into watching the movie, I feel like Alan Moore, who wrote the graphic novel, is much more committed to that nihilist vision of everything is bad and heroes are a farce and kind of a false god to believe in. I always got the feeling watching the film version of Watchmen that Zack Snyder really wanted to make a superhero film. Right. He loves that. He loves the color palette. He loves the fun fight scenes and so forth. So I think that led to a little bit of the tension and disjunction there between the two.
Yeah, so as you can see, we believe that that directorial hand kind of confused some of the thematics, and we're not sure exactly what he wants us to, at least not necessarily leave us with a statement, but just what he wants us to think. or think about. I will say that the backstories in this film are great, but one of the larger weaknesses for me is maybe it's not a weakness, but it was definitely something that might put off certain people, is that it has a very strange structure, and it sort of lives on your willingness to
it requires patience, and it requires a bit of focus, even though I find it, like, even watching it years later, like, I find it super engaging to watch, and I don't really have an issue with the timing of it. But if you're not invested from like minute 10 onwards, you're gonna find it pretty hard to hold on to, I think.
Yeah, and like the for me personally, one of the biggest things that sort of made it a struggle to watch sometimes was just one very particular strand, one plot line. It was with I guess two characters, Night Owl and Silk Spectre.
And the Silk Spectre.
Right?
Yeah.
The number 2 or the
I kind of want to talk more about this one because...
It's, like, I mean, I'm sure there's a number of things about it, but the biggest thing was just the performances. Without ruining everything, from the very moment the actor opened her mouth, I'm sure I've been told she's good in other films, but maybe this just wasn't the right role for her, or she didn't quite exist in this universe as best as, or like she was casted properly. It's just, I didn't believe anything she said. A lot of the moments that I thought should have been super impactful in that particular storyline, just super fell flat for me, and I just didn't. She actually took me out of some of those moments, and I was just like, can I go to somebody else now?
Yeah, and it's tough too, because Night Owl, who's playing across from her, is supposed to be playing essentially a figuratively and literally impotent version of Batman. So he's supposed to be working with the very tormented past, but he doesn't have one. It's a character who's got a ton of privilege, he inherits a ton of money at his disposal, and really doesn't have too much going on in his life other than this sort of failed dream of being a superhero. So I think between the two of them, there's a lot of playing on kind of mutual regret and sort of false delusions of grandeur that could make it a bit of a bummer. So.
Mitch, you said you had a brief thing you wanted to mention, or is something that you want to keep?
I feel like it's discussion material. You know what I mean?
All right. Yeah. Well, then let's get to the fun part. Kevin, I'm going to put you on the spot and give us your quick grade and whether they should or should not watch this.
Quick grade. I'm hovering somewhere between a B and a B plus overall. I think certainly
by the end of it, you have to pick one. I'm going to nail you to one.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. So the first half for me is a B. The second half is a B plus. So I think overall I'll compromise on a B plus. But certainly it took some momentum to get me there.
I'm also going to compromise on a B plus. And it's less divided than you are, like in terms of first and second half. It's sort of like around 70 to 80% of it I'm in, and then about like 10% I'm like, ugh, and then 10 I'm not sure about. But I really enjoy this movie. It's just not as great as the source material, and because I think the source material is so much in it, it feels a little more disappointing. Paul?
What you said, basically. Maybe I'll be like 60% where I'm there, and then like 20% where I'm not sure, but yeah. There's one part that I'm going to bring in the discussion that I literally just want to stop and like smack my head against the desk, but
so are we all B plus? We all
yeah,
agree?
we're all B plus.
I think we're B plus.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's fine.
United.
Never happens.
Other than that, guys, I'm going to get us straight to the discussion. Thanks for joining us in the old school version. We usually have our visuals, but today it's just going to be an old traditional podcast.
It's really intimate today, you guys.
Yeah. Other than that, join us in discussion if or when you watch the film, and we're going to be doing it basically spoilers galore. We'll break down certain parts of it, and we hope to see you guys there. I'm Paul Weston.
I'm Mitchell Allen.
Kevin Hatch.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.